Happy Monday, people. If you were watching last week, you heard me talk about questions. I was feeling it then, I'm feeling it today, talking about answers, the other side of that. Questions are asked to receive answers, generally speaking. So I wanted to talk a little bit about giving answers, maybe a little bit about receiving answers, but definitely giving answers. If you go back, I don't really view this as like a part two thought process to last week, but it is heavily connected. So you could look at it that way. But everything I talked about with questioning last week and the importance of questions, I wanted to follow up with the importance of answers this week and really how we give answers. And a lot of that, with my work as a therapist, questions are a huge part of that, and answers are as well. And I will just start with something that's, I think, important with that is a lot of answers to questions can also be questions. You can return a question with a question. And that's, therapy has a lot of that. A lot of different philosophies have a lot of that. I think Hebrew is a lot of that. And, the Greeks asked a lot of questions as well, but I think a little bit more Hebrew is question with a question. And that can be a form of answering. And I think there's probably some people out there that might not agree with that of like, well, it's just adding another question. But, one example is if someone in therapy were to ask me, what should I be doing in this situation, to keep it super vague and generalized? Like, what should I do given the circumstance? A fair response is, what do you think you should do? And that puts it back on them. And sometimes it's just understanding where the question comes from. A lot of times people don't want the burden of deciding something. They want other people to make a decision for them. If you can identify that's where that question came from, then you can respond with a question that gives that autonomy back to them, even if they don't want it. Kids do this all the time. Like, can I have this? Can I have that? Can I have, like, they're deferring to authority with that of help with my autonomy on this. And sometimes we can respond back with, what do you think? And sometimes that can happen before a fuller answer comes. Someone says, what should I do with this? What are you thinking you should do? I think I should do this. Cool. I would recommend this. Of getting the person to think a little bit more about their situation instead of just go straight to asking for help. And we do this a lot with parenting, where if a kid is stuck or dealing with something, it's actually good for them to have some stress around it. Not high level stress. I'm thinking of Legos is a good example. Kids trying to pull Legos apart or trying to build something they're struggling, they say, can you help me? It's okay to push them to try a little bit harder for a minute, of like, can you try it a different way? I wonder if there's another way you can do it, and let them struggle with it. And if they still can't, then you help. But to put that problem solving pressure on them. And that's such an important skill to develop, is the ability to solve problems and to work out solutions. So that's where asking a question back can be really helpful. Is it saying, I'm here for you. Think about it this way and see if that does anything. How would you solve this? What's another way you could go about this? Things like that. So I just wanted to throw that in there to get the ball rolling, where it's important to be able to answer questions with questions, and that's a fair response. It can be done in an arrogant or really annoying way, but it's still a useful task. Like everything, it can be mishandled. So answers with questions, or question for question, is fair at times. Now, the thing that connects responding to a question with a question or an answer is thoughtfulness. I think when you're asked a question, sometimes you can give quick and flippant responses, but answers are a really, really important thing. And getting truth is a very important thing. And giving a true answer is not the same as giving the ultimate truth. So if someone asks me how electricity works, and I say I don't really know how that works, that's an honest answer, but it doesn't give a true, full understanding of the question. How does electricity work? I don't have that. But by me answering with the honesty of my situation, I don't know, that helps that person get closer to where they need to be, instead of me trying to fabricate some answer that isn't very helpful. It gets me off their checklist. Right, this person doesn't know, let's move on. Or I could say, I don't know, but you can go to this source and look it up because this YouTube channel talks about it. Go to Wikipedia, find the links through there, look at some stuff, get some information started, and go from there. Like, that's still an honest answer, even if it's not the answer that they wanted. So that's still an appropriate answer. But being very wise and patient with a response is good. You'll occasionally see interviews with celebrities, and it's pretty rare. Keanu Reeves will do it. Jordan Peterson will do it, depending on if you count that as a celebrity or not. There's a couple other people who will do this at times. Alex Hormozy does it. You can watch them get asked questions and they're like dead silent, sometimes for an uncomfortable length of time. And I think in the clickbaity reels, TikTok shorts, fast-paced culture, slowness is not appreciated in the same way. And thoughtfulness isn't appreciated. People say, oh, they're so thoughtful. Thoughtful isn't necessarily quick. It can be, but it means you're thinking through something. It can be thoughtful to write someone a card. That might just be the first thing that comes to your mind. Oh, let's write them a card. That's the very thoughtful thing. But it can also mean being very slow with consideration of what you're going to do, including an answer. So someone says, what's your greatest fear? And you're silent for 2 minutes. That's extremely appropriate. But we often feel very pressured. And we often feel silence, say, and start making noise. Or we just say, I don't know. But a lot of us give rushed responses, even a response of I don't know, when we might actually know, because we're afraid of a quiet space and taking up space through the use of silence. And that is not good. We shouldn't be in a hurry for answers. I would rather have a correct answer to a question that takes someone a week to get to me versus a wrong answer that I get within 30 seconds of asking. And I think that's really important. We want a rushed answer, but the impatience comes from the frustration of the other person not having the answer that we want quick enough, which is selfishness because we don't have the answer. And then we're upset when this other person takes time to get us the answer. That's a bit self-centered and selfish. Now, if this person's communicated that they have answers and then they don't, that's different. If there's a break in an agreement of, I trust you to have answers and you don't. But also, people that we trust to have answers are not perfect. And again, we'd rather have someone, I hope, do a good job than a rushed job. And a lot of people have experience with rushed jobs that aren't good and delayed jobs that aren't good. So this is about if the goal of that party, of that person, is to give an accurate account of something, then it might require time, or it might be quick. It might be quick. Someone were to ask me how much faster can someone learn something through play versus not play, I can tell you that they learn 400 times faster, 400 times, not 400%. And that's a true statistic. I know that. I've seen the research, and that's my specialty. So I know that. I don't have to think for very long, despite messing up the data there for a second. Yeah, a 400 times increase. That's why we learn through song, and that's why a lot of people want to learn something through playing a game or through doing. We learn by doing because if you can make it playful, if you can have fun with it, you learn faster because your brain is going crazy in a really good way. Whereas if you're bored, it's a lot harder to learn anything. So I can give that answer quick, and there's other things that I can answer quickly. I can tell you very quickly all the chords in the key of C major because I've studied that and I know it. I know how to play it. Someone who doesn't know music couldn't do that as quick. And if they didn't have the internet, that would take a lot longer to learn. So there's certain things that I can give a quick answer, and it's going to be the right answer. And it's not going to actually happen quickly. I've taken time to learn it. The recall happens quickly, but the answer I have earned over time. And so looking at the ability to answer a question, a quick response can still be a very wise and accurate response. Usually that just means it was done over time prior. That question has been prepped in advance, whether intentionally or not. So I don't learn things necessarily to answer questions all the time, but often that's kind of the case. That's why we learn, is we're curious about something. There's a question: how does this work? What does this look like? And so I'd be fine if someone argues everything that we attempt to learn is based initially from a question. I think that's a perfectly fair argument. So, but giving an answer is a big deal. I think about we call it gullibility of people. We just often assume truth from things, or the opposite. If you've watched the recent presidential debate, there are probably certain things that you heard either candidates say that you immediately assumed was untrue, but you actually had a very uninformed reason to think that. Now you might say, my informed reason is this person has lied in the past. And then my question would be, do you have the evidence that they've lied? And this is the dangerous part about how we get information, is we get answers all the time by tuning into the channels or the sources that we want to gain, in this case, political information. And there's an initial trust that has to happen there. And this is why it's so important to utilize resources that cite other resources. If you're reading articles or if you're watching the news and they're not citing actual information, that's probably not very healthy for you to consume that. This happened a lot with masks and mask mandates, and when that was going around and people were saying it's illegal for you to do this and this, like reading other stuff. I live in Kansas City, and reading things that were happening in California, people were saying it was illegal to do, and I don't remember the specifics, so I'm not going to go into it, but this type of gathering was not allowed. Like, it was actually illegal. And it was this huge hubbub, and people that I knew were talking about it, and other people online. And it took me about 4 or 5 articles to actually find someone to cite the law or statute that was passed. And I went to that source, found that source, read the actual thing that passed instead of reading the article. And it wasn't actually an illegal outlaw. There was something, it was still, I would argue, an inappropriate thing that was happening, but it wasn't something being made illegal. There was just weird stuff happening with how that one town was handling things, or that might have been the state. But you were able to figure that out by just reading the source and reading the statement. So going to sources is important, and getting the answers accurate. An accurate answer is amazing when we have it. This is why people go to the doctor, and they don't want something to be wrong with them, but sometimes they're like, I kind of want there to be something wrong, because then at least I know what's wrong. Someone's feeling down and they're tired all the time, and the doctor says, well, you look fine. And you're like, I wanted an answer that was almost bad, so I could at least know where to focus my effort in. This is all why a good answer is helpful. A good answer focuses attention in on the thing, but that requires good questions. So I might sit here and be like, why can't I get my life under control? Why can't I be more productive? Why can't I handle this issue? And being able to ask a bunch of questions, sometimes the right question focuses that in. Where someone's like, why am I so tired all the time? I'm sleeping as much as I can, and I'm exercising like I'm supposed to, and I'm doing my diet the way I'm supposed to, and I'm doing everything around my day I'm supposed to, and I'm studying about how to sleep well and how to get up, and even caffeine usage and all this stuff. And then I learned that someone asked me, well, how's your marriage? And if this person has an emotionally draining marriage, then they might be exhausted all the time. And maybe it started to get that way recently, and it's been getting worse because they're focusing all this attention on fixing sleep and fatigue and all this other stuff. And what's actually happening is they're emotionally drained from the most important relationship in their life. And if they could just fix that, they would have energy again, because they wouldn't have hours a day of this stuff banging around in their mind and feeling drained. And that can arrive from someone asking a different question. This person says, I'm tired all the time, and I'm doing everything. And then the person they're talking to says, how's your marriage? That feels so weird and out of nowhere. But that person knows that having a marriage that is oppressive and pulling you down is going to tire you out and fatigue you more. It just will. And so asking good questions is important, and having good answers is important. So that person being asked that, a good answer is not to be dismissive. Don't be like, that's not part of it. Forget, I'm talking about this. That person, if they're trusting the person they're talking to, should think, why would that matter? And then respond accordingly. Like, okay, this is what's going on with it. Or even just say, why is that relevant? And that person can answer. It can cause you to feel really tired and drained all the time. Are you emotionally exhausted from it? The person might be like, yeah, I am. It's okay. Let's take a look at that for a second. So that's a humility of getting asked a question that you think is silly, but wondering, there's a reason this is being asked. Could it benefit me? And taking a minute or two out of your day to just like humor the question and give real answers. And then anytime you're being asked something, you should be very careful with your answer, because we influence people dramatically. That's why I brought up the news a minute ago. Where you learn information is a huge deal. The amount of people who are learning things from YouTube Shorts, for instance, or Instagram Reels or TikTok is really cool and really scary, because there's almost no vetting that's happening. There's some medical vetting. I see this on YouTube, especially. They'll put little disclaimers at the bottom of like, this person's licensed in the medical field. I think that does a good job. There was a lot of stuff with COVID where it was saying like, this is a topic on this and we're censoring it, or we're not in full support of what this is being said. And that's, it also depends on who's censoring and if there's an agenda there or not, like all this crazy stuff. And then Instagram will put explicit warnings on stuff sometimes if it's heavy content. But there are just people who, I see this a lot with therapy. People go to therapy and they come back and they're like, I have this amazing tool that's going to help everyone. And they give advice on TikTok or whatever. And it's bad advice. It was for them in their therapy session. It was useful to them. It wasn't something that they're supposed to go and share to the whole world. Sometimes it's good to share things like that from therapy, but a lot of people go in and they take information that was given just to them to help their life, and they throw it out like it's gospel truth for everyone. And that's not what therapy is. Actually, there's times where you get tools that are translatable. I know I harp on sleep a lot because it's important, but if I tell anyone who's not getting enough sleep to get more sleep and they do it, their mental health will improve like 95% of the time. It's such a basic thing. There's a couple basic things that if you just do them, your mental health will improve. And exercise is a huge one, so much so that countries are I don't know if it's a requirement or pushing that you have to prove that you've attempted exercise before you get medications for depression, because exercise is better for depression than medications are. Are there going to be some people that that's not true for? Yeah, like severe clinical depression, it's going to be more helpful to have medication. But for 100% of people, doing some sort of movement and keeping their body going is going to improve their mental health and their depression symptoms. Will it eliminate it for everyone? Nope, but it will help. So that's something that someone could go on any video and say, you should get more sleep. And even that should be done a certain way, because some people when they're depressed are sleeping like 11 or 12 hours, and that's actually a negative effect. Or people who are exercising are doing it because they have an eating disorder, or because they are hyper-focused on something that's not healthy, or there's body dysmorphia, and they're working out way too much. So if your therapist talks about working out and exercising is really healthy, and this person goes, everyone should work out more, there's going to be someone who has body issues that hears that and exercises more. And you might say, well, I'm not responsible for having said that. You are responsible in some way for communicating misinformation. And this is a slippery slope, but when we give an answer, if I'm being talked to one-on-one with someone, the answer I give to them is for them. It is not for anyone else in their life. Right now, I'm talking to a screen, which could be viewed by 0 people, or it could be viewed by 1 million people. So I need to be speaking in a way that gives answers that are applicable to everyone, which is why I give a lot of disclaimers when I speak. And when I talk about exercise, it's like everything I say, there should be a grain of salt element of take that to a professional to see if that is true for you in this situation. Sleep and exercise, those things being on point, are good for everyone. Take that to the bank. Now, depending on how much sleep and exercise you're getting, You might not need more. You might need less. Or you might need a change in how they look. You might be getting enough of them but need to shift it a little bit. You might be overdoing weightlifting and need to work on mobility or cardio. You might be spending a lot of time in your bed but not actually sleeping, and having something on your wrist or something that you wear to track sleep is going to be more helpful because you're not getting restful sleep. Things like that. And those specifics get better the more focused in you get with a person. So one-on-one with me, which is one of the reasons why therapy is expensive, is you're getting one-on-one time with an expert who is focusing on you. And that's why for me and other people, we don't actually think it's that expensive. It's got a high dollar amount. When you think of value for cost, it's not that bad. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hit your wallet hard. That makes sense. When you buy a house, like a house that's, a couple $100,000 today, hopefully is a decent house. And that doesn't mean you're like, oh, that's just expensive. It's pricey, but for what you're getting, it makes sense. Same with a car that's in good shape. So you have to keep that in mind when you're going to therapy. People often just think price tag and they think, oh, it's expensive. You have to think about what you're getting out of it. And there are bad therapists and there are great therapists. So there are some who are charging way more than their value, and there are others who are charging way less than their value. And so it is a value assessment. What are you getting out of it? You're getting one-on-one time with a focused person. Same with fitness training. If you have a personal trainer or you have someone that cooks your meals, like a chef or a meal prepper, like those are focused work for you. And that's why they cost more. And you're getting that focused time with someone who knows things, and you're getting answers that are focused to you. You're asking questions, how can I do this? And the answer is directly at you. And then it's on you to take that in and actually hopefully think this person should know what they're talking about. Can I take that information in and do something useful with it? And to keep it in the vein of therapy, if I'm asked a question in therapy, I owe it to that person to give a very thoughtful response. And I believe this on multiple levels: personal, moral, religious. Every part of my life, question and answers come up. If you read a lot of philosophy, a lot of religion, a lot of people's values in life, being really specific with answers and questions is actually important to a lot of people and a lot of belief systems. A lot of people don't behave that way. They give flippant responses, but they say they believe it, like they like the idea. Their actions don't show that, but a lot of people want to do better at that. And I think it's an amazing thing to want to do better at. I think everyone could do well to improve it. If everyone on earth improved by 5% of their ability to give thoughtful answers, I think we'd have a much more patient, smarter, and well-intended and directed world. You'd have, I don't know if this percent flips that way, but 5% up, I'm just going to say 5% decrease in misinformation online. You'd have people posting less. I would challenge everyone today, if you can think about this, I think this would be a really fun challenge, or depending on when you watch this over the next 24 hours or tomorrow, to only say things that you know to be true. That sounds kind of silly, especially if you're like, I'm an honest person. Not something that you just heard someone on YouTube say, like me, or someone on another social media platform, but something that you know is true, that you've looked into. And yes, there's going to be holes here. You're going to think some things are true and you've actually researched them poorly and you're ignorant to it, or there's going to be things that you are actually right about, but you don't feel like you've studied it enough and you're not going to give an answer. But think about that for a day or so and make steps towards that, only answering what you know to be true. And you'll find usually that you're a lot more quiet than you would like to be, because a lot of us are just speaking out of our butt and don't know what we're talking about, or we're just regurgitating something and hoping that the first person was true with what they said. And to some extent, you do have to just trust professionals. I get that. Like, you pay certain people so you don't have to do all the work. They're going to be wrong sometimes. That's okay. But try that for a day and see what happens. Just only answering things that you know to be true. And the response of I don't know, or my experience is this, that's a true response. You're just not saying definitively this. Or if you have a certain experience, you don't say everyone's like this. In my experience, this is the case. Or from what I understand, it looks like this, but I don't know. That's an okay answer. But to be really clear about being truthful. So yeah, I'm going a couple different directions with this, and I do think everyone owes it to themselves and the world around them to be very thoughtful with their answers that they give to questions. I really think that our society underestimates the power of answering questions and how strong of an influence it has on people. Really, really strong influence, because it's a statement of truth, and it's a straight statement of commitment. You're saying, I commit this answer to be correct. And when you're not right, it's a bit of a violation to reality that you've perpetuated an untruth to the world in order to make it better, when in reality you've made it worse by speaking and opening your mouth. So be really mindful of that, and also know that you'll make mistakes all the time, but be mindful. Answers are important. Be thoughtful with your answers. Think before you speak. Think hard before you speak. And focus on truthful answers. And I think most people will be really amazed at what they find. They'll be more silent than they expected, and they will be surprised at how ignorant they are, myself included. Well, I'm not as surprised anymore, because I try to reflect on this a lot. I just know that I'm ignorant to a lot of things now. But it can really help, and it can really help you to stay in your lane. Like, yeah, I'm not going to stress about this. I don't know. So take that as an encouragement today. Question video last week if you're interested. Answers today. If you're interested in therapy services, reach out to me in the comment section or to my emails or contact info in the description. Be happy to work with anyone listening potentially, or get you connected with someone who is a better fit than I am. So enjoy your Monday, and I look forward to talking to everyone next week. See ya.